Hello everyone and welcome to the Friday recap where we look back on what was a very interesting Friday from Mugello, and the main thing that we learned today is this track bites. So many drivers came a cropper after making mistakes, and this is the sort of thing that people like to see. Tracks with gravel on the exit and everything that punish drivers for mistakes. And this is an old school track that a lot of people like. And the cars are incredible to watch around this circuit. So, let's talk through what happened on day one at the Tuscan Grand Prix. This session was more of a familiarisation, basically, as you typically see with a track that Formula 1 goes to for the first time, where the drivers simply use the session to familiarise themselves with the track, which meant it wasn't really representative of what the order might be going forward in the weekend. But taking a look at the result, it was a Mercedes that topped the session, as you'd usually expect, ahead of Max Verstappen in second. Charles Leclerc was in third, ahead of Lewis Hamilton in fourth. Pierre Gasly in fifth after his race win. It'll be interesting to see if he has rejuvenated confidence. Then have Esteban Ocon, Danny Kvyat, Lando Norris, Alex Albon and Daniel Ricciardo in 10th. Then you have Raikkonen, Grosjean, Vettel, Giovinazzi, Sainz, Russell, Magnussen, Stroll, Perez, Latifi. Like I said, not going to talk much about this order because this was simply the drivers getting accustomed to the track, and it was a second practice session which was much more representative, but we did get an initial sense of how tough this track is. Practice 2 was where all the action happened. And in a video that we saw of George Russell in practice 1, you could see how much of a toll this track takes on drivers. Because he did a video lap where he described on the team radio as he drove round each corner. He described the lap as he drove it. You could hear him in his voice straining to make those corners. Really straining to make the really fast corners. That really showed how much of a toll it took on a driver. It's going to be such a tough race. And so many drivers made mistakes. Lando Norris was the first major one to come a cropper. He got on in the session. He went on to the exit of I believe turn 3. I can't remember the corner name, but he went on to the exit of turn 3 and spun into the barrier, which ended his session. He did actually look like he was going to try to bring it back to the pits, but eventually he had to shut off the engine. Then you saw Sebastian Vettel, as you can see in the pictures, have a spin on the exit of the Correntallo corner. And then at the end of the session, you had a bizarre incident which you can see on the screen now, involving Sergio Perez and Kimi Raikkonen, where Sergio Perez exited the pits next to Raikkonen, but Raikkonen appeared not to see him. Neither did Perez appear to see where Raikkonen was, which meant that both collided. No, I don't really think it was anyone's fault, that incident, but in the session, the cars were incredible to watch, but it was normal service resumes up the front with Mercedes and Red Bull on top. Valtteri Bottas topped the timesheets ahead of Lewis Hamilton in second. Valtteri Bottas was in third. Not Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen was in third ahead of Alexander Albon in fourth. Then it was the two Renaults of Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon. They weren't expecting to be fast around this circuit, but they have shown pace so far. Sergio Perez was 7th despite the incident, ahead of Pierre Gasly in 8th. Kimi Raikkonen despite the incident, had one of his best Fridays so far, where he finished the session in 9th in the Alfa Romeo ahead of Charles Leclerc in 10th. They had a bit of a headline time in practice 1, but unfortunately I don't really think that was their legit pace. Then he had Stroll, Vettel, Sainz, Norris, Kvyat, Russell, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Magnussen, and Romain Grosjean could only do one run at the beginning of the session, as I believe some sort of a power unit issue kept him in the garage for the entirety of, pretty much the entirety of the session, only doing 5 laps. Another Haas issue keeping the driver in the garage for the entire session. So, that is the second practice session. Now let's talk about the Formula 2 session. The Formula 2 qualifying session drew to a close around half an hour ago, and it was a fairly interesting session once again. And once again, this track proving that it bites, as Mick Schumacher had a very hairy moment at the start where he somehow kept it out of the wall going into the gravel. He was far from the only one who was punished for making a mistake by a trip through the gravel, as we saw Luca Giotto and Juri Vips have trips through the gravel, and I believe Giuliano Alesi had one as well. And it was in terms of the corner, it was mainly the Arrabbiata corners that were catching the drivers out, which is not really surprising. But it was quite a shaken up grid as a result of the various yellow flags, which cost quite a few drivers. So, taking a look at the grid for tomorrow's feature race, it was Christian Lundgaard who took his maiden pole position in Formula 2 ahead of Dan Ticktum, who was literally 5,000. He was a little frustrated to have just missed out on taking pole position in his dams. But Christian Lundgaard managed to take it. Callum Ilott, the championship leader, qualified in 3rd on the grid, ahead of Marcus Armstrong. A significant improvement after a real barren period for Marcus to qualify in 4th. Where could he feature in the race tomorrow? Then you have Felipe Drugovich in 5th, ahead of Jehan Daruvala. Juri Vips has shown some good pace today so far. He starts in 7th tomorrow, ahead of Luca Giotto in 8th. Robert Schwartzman had to back out on both his laps that are on fresh tyres, but managed to put a lap together which was good enough for 9th. A reasonable effort from him, considering the fact that lap was on older tyres. Then you have Jack Aitken in 10th place for Campos, rounding up the top 10. Then you have Yuki Tsunoda, Louis Delatres, Guan Yu Zhu once again struggles in qualifying. Nikita Mazepin qualified in 14th. Mick Schumacher after his issue didn't really recover his pace. He starts in 15th ahead of Pedro Piquet in 16th. Then you have Marino Sato, Roy Nissany, Artem Markelov, Giuliano Alesi, Nobuharu Matsushita, and Guilherme Samaya rounds out the grid for tomorrow's feature race. And the first qualifying session of the day happened in the form of the Formula 3, which was your textbook session, but it had a lot of Formula 3 session, but it had a lot of it was crucial in the destiny of the championship, especially as the 2 title contenders went into this race with grid penalties. Logan Sargent with a 3-place grid penalty, and Oscar Piastri with a 5-place grid penalty. And at the moment, it looks like Sargent could have a significant opportunity tomorrow to make inroads on Oscar Piastri's lead in the standings, because considering how they compared in the session. So, taking a look at the starting grid for tomorrow, it was a closely fought battle up front, but it was Narem Zendelli who took pole position, his second pole position of the season, Ahead of Jake Hughes, who showed really good pace throughout the day, but just missed out at the end. Frederick Vesti, he was determined to be at the front of the queue, so he had a clear lap, and he qualified in third. Ahead of Enzo Fittipaldi in fourth. Logan Sargent starts in fifth after his... Actually, I believe may have made a bit of a mistake. I believe he starts in sixth after his three-place grid penalty. Because he originally qualified in third. So that would mean in fifth would be Sebastian Fernandez. Teo Porcher showed reasonable pace once again. Ahead of David Beckman in eighth. Dennis Hauger starts in ninth. Ahead of Alexander Smollier in 10th. Jack Doohan in 11th. And Liam Lawson in 12th. Richard Verschoor starts in 13th. Ahead of Alex Peroni. And then Oscar Piastri, 15th. He qualified in 10th, but his 5-place grid penalty puts him down into 15th. He has a lot of work to do as a result of his penalty, and he struggled in qualifying. Then you have Nannini, Schumacher, Coolwell, Viscal, Belov, Malvestiti, Dunner, Novalak, Flörsch, Williams, Stanek, Das and Daleda. You may notice that there are 2 cars missing. That is because Pierre-Louis Chauvet is competing in Formula Regional, so is not taking part in this weekend's Formula 3 action. And also, Igor Fraga is not taking part for undisclosed reasons. So, the big thing is, what have we learned from today? Well, I think we have learned that, as I just said this morning, or not this morning, at the beginning of the session, this stream, that this track bites when you make a mistake, that you could easily end up in the wall if you make a slight mistake. And it's good to have a track where you're being punished for mistakes on the calendar. A lot of people are saying this makes up for the loss of Suzuka this year, because obviously Suzuka was cancelled as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that this track, a lot of people are saying this track makes up for it. As expected, the section from the Casanova corner to the second Arrabbiata is incredible in a Formula 1 car. And it's going to get even better in qualifying come tomorrow. It's going to be one of the best qualifying sessions of the season to watch these cars at their best. To watch a Formula 1 car working at its best. And the final thing that we learned, obviously, is that our predictions about the tyres did come true in the end. The tyres, a lot of drivers were saying that the tyres did not last long at all. On the radio, they were saying. And I think it will be quite hard for the teams to do a one-stop strategy. So we should get a 2-stop strategy, which should result in quite an interesting race. And also, the DRS seemed to be... We did see a couple of times that the DRS seemed to be fairly powerful down this back straight, because obviously they're running higher downforce than in Monza. So I think we should see some overtaking. I think we should be in for an exciting race this weekend. So, thank you very much for watching. Of course, I did describe yesterday the changes that are going to be done. Tomorrow, I will be mainly talking about qualifying all the Formula 1 action. I'll be briefly mentioning what happens in the F3 and the F2 race, but the F2 and the F3 races will have their main coverage in the Road to F1 show, which I'll be doing on Monday. And tomorrow and Sunday will be mainly about the Formula 1. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for the qualifying day review. Goodbye.